Okay, well, hello, and welcome to another of my series of conversations. My name is John Cornicello, and I welcome you to the series that I go live on most Mondays and Thursdays. Coming up later this month, I've invited Dale Bernstein, who assisted Irving Penn and Richard Avedon, among others, in the 80s. And then Eric Joseph is coming in on the 26th, and we're working on a few other special speakers for you. So you can get all the details at cornicello.com/conversations. Today, my guests are David Bicho and Anders Hannola. You might know them from the Pro Photo Academy Instruction Series. And these are the guys I go to with my lighting questions. So please, warm welcome to David and Anders.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So we have a couple of slides prepared for us, but hopefully we'll have as well some time for conversations.
Definitely.
A lot of questions from you guys. If you load it up with the questions, the trickier the better. We love that. We love, especially if they're around light.
Especially if there is, exactly, especially if it is around light. We love really tricky ones. And I know that, John, I know that you can push some really tricky buttons, so I'm prepared.
Yeah,
we are prepared.
I'm a little worried about John's questions, though.
Yeah.
But anyway, so one of the reasons why we are here is that David and I have also, we crossed paths back and forth a long time. We have, David has about 20 plus years of experience as a photographer. I have 15 years plus, and we're both light nerds. There's a difference between how we work in a way that David always brings in the big guns, the heavy duty things.
And Anders always bringing in, you know, the small, little, easy to carry things.
Yeah, I'm the nanopole guy.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, and you're the mega boom guy.
Yeah.
And but we share this one thing, and it's this very, very strong passion about sharing knowledge and specifically around lighting. So that's really the reason why we decided, why don't we do something about it now that we have all this COVID-19 and there's no travel, no workshops, there's a lot of Zoom meetings, and in the past we always traveled around and got to meet a lot of photographers around different parts of the world, but now we don't. So we still wanted to do that. So we started this website, lightbybicho.com, where it's all about building a community where people can ask questions and if before a shoot or after a shoot, or if they've seen something on the image, how can you do that? And there's plenty of a lot of fun and educational material. But
exactly.
We'll talk more about that if we have time.
Yes.
But that's kind of who we are. We have also created all the, the Instagrams, the Twitters, the YouTube channels, and the Facebook channels. So Light by Bicho is where a great resource, and you can find us in all those different channels.
And I don't know if you noticed, but Anders is the guy who talks, and I know.
And I notice you've used "Let There Be Light," but I always say that's the easy one. "Let There Be Dark" is the difficult one.
That's
try to create darkness.
Absolutely, it's easy to light. Light is very easy, but it's shadows. That's where everything is happening.
Exactly.
And which is very true. And I'm thinking I'll share a couple of images of kind of, you see the difference in what we are doing. I went out to, was it not last summer, but the summer before, I went to Botswana with a nature photographer, and he wanted to take images of the wildlife during the night, and he wanted to use flash or light them somehow. And this was during new moon, and we couldn't use constant lights because that scares the animals away. But flash, they didn't react to, because that's you have thunder and lightning naturally on the out in the bush, so they didn't react to that. So we were hiding. This is the image to the right. We are about 6 feet away from the leopard, so we're using a wide angle, and we're hiding in thorn bushes, so which they don't like, so they let us be there. But it's a wild leopard, and it's not in a park where the animals are habitated or anything. And here I'm using an A1 to light the leopard, so it kind of creeps into light. So not completely as bam, a lot of light, but trying even there in the bush, trying to paint with light and use darkness to kind of define and make that mystical animal creep into light.
Were you scared? I mean, it was a
I
leopard.
was, yeah, I was scared to death. And we had several near-death experiences. We had a young lion male that attacked us.
Okay.
He was not happy that we were around his
But
water
thanks
hole.
to the A1, you could like flash him in the face and or what?
Yeah, no, no, that was not a smart thing to do like that. So, but we backed, screaming and yelling, trying to be as big and aggressive as possible. So he kind of got surprised. And then as soon as we got into the car, everything was okay. But
So
that was not the most thing. The hippos were really creepy. But,
the hippos are creepy.
yeah, but so you can use light anywhere. But that's not what I do most. I do a lot of portraits. That's my thing. We have one example on that side, and then also took portraits of the guy to the right. I don't know if anyone recognizes him. No? Oh, you should.
It's Albert Wilson.
There we go, Cheryl. Finally, someone. That's good. That's Albert, and I met him in Birmingham, and I was supposed to take a portrait of him. How do you take a portrait of a master or legend like that? So I was standing talking to him, and I said, "Well, why don't we tell me about the story about when you shot Steve Jobs, the classical Steve Jobs image?" And then he told me that the whole story around that. And I said, "Well, why don't you stand like you're posing him?" So I mirrored the image. All the lighting and everything is mirrored, like he would stand in front of Steve Jobs. So I got that portrait of him. And then the guy on the left is the CEO and the owner of Profoto. I do a lot of work for Profoto. I'm not employed by them. I'm a freelancer. And like David, we use a lot of Profoto, but we're not sponsored by them. We buy our products like everyone else. So that's kind of what I do. But mainly what I do most is I work a lot. I'm the house photographer in arenas, in the big arenas here in Stockholm. So I shoot a lot of different type of famous people. Sometimes it's fun, like these guys, when it's music artists, but there could be kickoff meetings, or it could be monster trucks or horse show, etc. And then there's a portrait session before we go live, and which is hanging on their wall of fame on the big arenas. So that's what I do, and it's really interesting. Sometimes you have a lot of time, sometimes you have less time, and most of these people are very, very pleasant to work with as well. They're very professional, and there have been a couple of scares where I was shooting Cher right before COVID hit Europe. She was one of the last shots I did, and I really thought she's going to be a big diva, but she was the coolest of them all in the portrait session.
Just like me.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a little bit about me. David, on the other hand,
Yes, I'm a commercial photographer who shoots everything that someone pays me to do. And oh, this image, this is the Hollywood Nordic star image, a typical thing of what I do. Someone tell me, please take a group shot of all the Swedish or Nordic, Scandinavian famous actors and writers. So I shot every single one of them separate and then put it all together. And I mean, these people are all around the world, so a lot of traveling. And sometimes I had no time, sometimes I had a lot of time, sometimes I had a lot of gear, sometimes I didn't have almost any gear. But in the final image, everything had to fit together. So this is all about knowing light, how to achieve what I want to achieve, even though I didn't have so much equipment, or when I had the equipment, so to speak. So it's just this image is all about controlling light, actually, because it had to fit together, even though, like the woman in the left corner, Susanne Bier, she was shot in a small conference room in Denmark. And
actually, if you go to our YouTube channel, there is there's one episode where you can actually see all the details about how you took that image.
Yeah.
So I recommend you go to the YouTube channel and get all the ins and outs and some image, some video as well from shooting these people and who they are.
Yeah, and who they are, because they are really famous in Scandinavia.
No, so I mean, Stellan Skarsgård at the far left has been in the Avenger and Thor movies.
Yeah.
You have some
Alicia Vikander,
Tomb Raider and Ex Machina.
Yeah, if I remember, some of this was shot even with speed lights.
That's correct. Yeah.
absolutely. So we have small equipment, so sometimes just speed lights. Actually, I don't know which one of them, but I think it's a Finnish girl there with a dress on the right, a blue and yellow dress. There we had, I don't know if I should say this, but now I had said A, so I have to say B. I didn't have I forgot my soft boxes and umbrellas and everything, but I had I had speed lights. So I used, big boards we write on, big papers.
Sure, poster boards.
Poster boards to create the light I needed. And that's another example of, with the knowledge of light, I still needed to have it exactly the way I wanted, so the final image would be possible to make a composite of. Yes.
And what else?
What else? Yes, this one was from a workshop we did in Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
Tokyo, yeah. So this image is actually a good example of the type of lighting I love to do, or we love to do.
Yeah.
It's about creating a natural looking light, even though everything is artificial.
Yeah, here's literally everything is artificial light. I mean, I have difficulties with the word artificial. There's no powder you can buy and pour it in water and mix it, and then it's light. It's all
light,
the same.
It's
photons. It's all natural.
Yeah, exactly. So I had this demand. I wanted a window in the studio because I knew that I wanted to do some light through a window in this workshop, but I didn't know that we were up on like
16th floor or something, way up
16th
high.
floor. So it was kind of tricky to get the light through the window since we were so high up. But we had a window on the opposite side of the street,
in the room,
outside.
On the room next door, or the building.
Yeah, the building.
Yeah.
So what we are doing, we're shooting our light onto the building on outside of the window, on the other side of the street, from another room, to make that bright white part.
Yeah, the burned out windows that you get.
Exactly. So we get that really burn out window, and then we start to light everything from the back towards the camera. So every little detail here is on purpose. There is nothing that isn't on purpose, and that is the way we love to work. And that is also, I think, that to look and see what nature does and take those details and recreate them.
And
that is the fun
the devil
part.
is really in the details here. You see, there's a small bright patch of light on the floor right in front of the model, and that's also deliberately placed there because those are things that happen in nature, and you have to break up. Like we put this gradient from left to right on the floor, but
in the left corner, yes.
Yeah, so on the floor in front of it. But I mean, we still want to break it up a little bit, and that's where we place the little light patch there.
Yeah, and I mean, like,
sorry, yeah.
So let me understand something. This was in a tall building in Japan.
Yeah.
And you're on the roof.
Not on the roof, but on the 16th floor, and we had more floors above us, so level 16.
But you're pointing the strobe head on the building across the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that creates the
to
light.
reflect the light back into the window that you're looking at now.
It doesn't reflect back in terms of creating this flare stuff. It just creates the white part.
The impression that it's daylight. How many watt seconds?
So,
you remember how many watt seconds you
that
needed
is
to do
nothing
that?
special. I think it's probably a Pro 8. I think we used for I mean, like 2400 perhaps. But the stray light isn't from the wall. The stray light is from another flash inside towards the camera. Inside
No, that part I understand.
Yeah,
but
great.
Just to create the illusion of the light coming through that window,
Exactly. Yeah,
bouncing off the building across the street.
Yeah.
to give that look.
Yes, but
How many watt seconds?
2400.
I would say that it should be like 2400 because we had a Pro 8. And I know that we used only one.
Yeah, it's one Pro 8, one Pro head, and with a standard zoom reflector. And we started at 10, but I think we pulled it down a little bit. So it's somewhere between 1200 and 2400. So it's not full stop down, but in between there. We had to pull it down a little bit.
To get the details from the curtains, is that the word?
No,
the
Blinds.
blinds,
yeah.
exactly, blinds.
Because they disappeared when we had full power.
Yes, and I mean the building wasn't like really, it wasn't so far away. It was kind of close, so it wasn't like
Japan,
100 meters.
everything.
It's Tokyo, yes.
Yeah. But that's, and this is the kind of this style that you teach and you shoot in, and that's, I mean, he's Yoda and I'm Luke Skywalker, so I've been schooled by David and trying my best with the lightsaber.
You're trying to lift me, but I just do like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what drew me to the two of you guys was sort of being mythbusters about light and going misconceptions about light. I mean, there's so much education I see online that's wrong.
Yes, there is so much. There's so many people out there who is, have found out their own way
methods,
methods or
their own truths.
Their own truths, exactly. And I mean, light is physics, and I mean, scientists have been working with physics for thousands of years. We have we know a lot of stuff about light, so there is no need to, try to reinvent the wheel. So we love to bust.
Yeah. Joe's asking in the comments, how long did it take to prepare this photo that we're looking at?
We had about an hour.
Yes.
Whoa.
I mean, this method of working with light, this is, I wouldn't say it's a recipe, but we always do it the same way, that we always work from the back towards the camera. We start with the back and make the back look beautiful. And then the next slide, next slide, next slide. So we build the image layer by layer like that. And it doesn't take so much time. You need an ID, a main ID. And in this case, the main ID was the window. So we start with window, and then we try to see, okay, what would be nice? What do we want to do?
And then behind us here, we have a whole group of photographers from
Students.
Japan. Yeah, and so as we were building it, we're talking about what are we doing now? Why are we doing this? And we had diverging shadows on the right-hand side on the wall. So how do we...
Actually, we have parallel shadows on the right side of the wall, which is the point.
No, but we did not.
Exactly.
And then we had to fix that. So how do we make sure that those shadows are not diverging and that they're parallel? So
and you can see the shadows on the table, they are diverging. Yeah. And they are diverging too much. So that is like, that isn't perfect. So there is, I mean, this is still a workshop image. If it was a real commercial image, then I would fix that, but not now. Yeah. So this is a good example of how we work when we work with workshops and try to speak about how to create natural looking light.
And both of us are kind of grounded in the physics, and then we translate that into, so what does this mean for us photographers? How can we use that? Sometimes it doesn't translate at all, then we just skip it and move on. But a good Saturday evening for us is when we are watching different, lectures with Richard Feynman, or that's a really good Saturday evening for us. 8-hour-long lecture with about physics.
So when you're setting up something like this, do you use a light meter? Cheryl's asking.
I am not using a light meter. I don't have anything against light meters, but I am not, because we shoot directly to a screen, and it's like painting an image. So we set, in this case, the window back first, and then build everything upon that. So we don't need to measure anything. So I don't, but that's, I mean, when I do stuff like this for film, for moving images, then I use a light meter a lot more, because it's much more critical with the dynamic range. But not not for still, but I wouldn't say that that's the correct way to do it. That is how we do it.
Yeah. So when you're building up a scene, do you always start with sort of a fill to get a base layer of exposure and add your key, or do
That's a
you
good question.
often start from the key?
Actually, in film, that is the standard way to do it, to start with a base layer, to have the shadows, to have details in the shadows. But I don't. I have a different approach. I do it like this. I start with my main ID of the light, some ID, something, and then I always keep my shadows as dark as possible. And that is a bit mind-fucking, but I do. So all the shadows, I keep them as dark as possible. And then I build layer after layer and always try to keep the shadows as dark as possible. And then in the end, the last thing I do, then I lift the shadows by some fill light or whatever. Then I have control over the contrast all the way, because then I can just lift the shadows exactly how much I want, instead of creating the shadows and then trying to keep that while building. So I keep it as dark as possible from all the way through the lighting process.
Great.
And that's also one episode that's on YouTube, is how you work with fill shadows.
Is it out?
I think that's on. Yeah, I think that's on.
But I don't know.
So we have a few episodes on YouTube at the that are out there, and I think that's.
I don't
that's
know. I don't know if I mentioned that, because it's kind of advanced. Because that is a separate episode I might do on how to control the contrast. In my workshops, when I do those, I have 2-day workshops with photographers. Then we talk about that, how to control the contrast, keep the shadows low, and then fill in the end.
Yeah, I usually think of the contrast as controlled by the environment.
Exactly. So if you keep it controlled the whole way, I mean, if you have a big studio, then it's really easy to control the contrast, the shadows, because the studio walls are so far away, so you won't have any field shadows. But if you're in a small environment, then it's even more.
Yeah, important. A lot of the folks watching are probably working in home studios that are pretty small.
Exactly. So, I mean, black cloths on the walls are your best friend, because then you can control those shadows.
Or black V flats and the like. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm often surprised at the effect of the environment or the environmental fill, like having a warm tone wood floor.
Yes.
Even for headshots, it helps to put down something dark or light on the floor and to get rid of that warm spill.
And I know there's a lot of studios with that warm wooden floor. And for me, that's like, because then you're starting out with a problem. I mean, it can create a feeling that you might like, but I would prefer to have it, neutral from the beginning and then put in the color if needed. That's how I see it.
And that's
so you're building all of these layers of light.
Yeah.
Based on your palette, which is the screen in front of you.
I think
that's are. The canvas, yeah.
I think you are putting it perfectly. You are exactly. That's the way I see it, as a painting. The screen is my painting, and I create depending on what I see and what parts of the image that feels boring or uninteresting or not in balance with others.
And how often do you what's the word I'm looking for?
You're a native English speaker.
Imagine how it is for us.
Yeah.
How often do you put a spider on your screen to make sure?
Oh, calibration.
Yeah. How often do you calibrate the screen?
I work with ASOS screens with a built-in calibrator. So I use that I have a lot of those screens. So
every time, the same here. Every time you turn it on, it calibrates. This little thing pops up and then it calibrates.
Yes, but
so every time you turn on the computer, it automatically does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that is actually is quite important is that when you are in a studio or at a set, it's often very dark, so you can see the modeling lights and such. Then your pupils, is that the word?
Yeah, pupil,
yeah, they go very big.
They dilate.
Right? Yeah. So, which makes your image look brighter than it is. So it's really important to keep an eye on the histogram and try to measure stuff on the screen to be in the right ballpark, because you can get fooled because your eyes are letting too much light in.
Now, once you do all this
Yes.
and you send the file to like a print house,
Yeah.
are they in fact also calibrating their system the way you're
Exactly.
calibrating your system?
Yes. I'm following this. I think it's called the FOGRA system, color system. So my calibration on my retouch computer, that is calibrated the best way it can be, and the print houses screens are also calibrated in,
The same way.
according to this standard. And then I have my Epson printer, so I can do my own prints first to really nail that. Yeah.
Which is critical. I mean, we did just the other week, we did a poster for a movie that's going to be released this Christmas, I guess.
Yeah.
And their colors are very important when because you know it's going to go for print.
Yeah.
As
Exactly.
well. Yeah.
So that is very important, and that level of quality insurance, if that's the right word, I need my clients need to know that I have that all in all my process from start to delivery, and I try to, and it works.
And I'm the guy hitting. You can hit any key to stop the calibration. So I'm always stopping it, and then it goes down because I'm in a hurry. Or
it always takes time.
And then David comes and says, "Now you're being lazy again." Well, no
Lazy.
shortcuts.
So you mentioned that you use the Pro 8 for that outside light there. You know, what do you think of the movement that seems to be moving away from packing heads to all monolights and speed lights?
Well, we suffer since we have 3 Pro 8s and 1 Pro 10, and we have our Pro heads. We love the Pro pack and head stuff a lot. I mean, and we use it a lot, so that's why we invested heavily in the big packs. So I'm trying to influence the engineers and Anders, his name is the CEO of Profoto as well, that there's a gap right now in between the D2 and the Pro 10. There is a gap in their portfolio, and there needs to be something where the acutes were in the past, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've learned to work a lot with the D2 as well. They're magnificent flashes, and they're really high performance. I mean, they beat the Pro 8s in performance, but still there are occasions when extreme cases where you need the watt seconds, you need a lot of power, and we are always pushing ourselves and also the images to the limit and past, because then we know we're creating something that's unique. So
exactly. And I mean, sometimes you need to have the durability. I mean, if you shoot like a couple of thousand of images every day in a studio like this, then you need to separate the head from the pack just to avoid the heat. So but then on the other hand, I mean, the battery options, I mean, it has really the technical part has really gone really far. It's a big difference now between
we used to B10s a lot.
10,
I mean, for location shoots, because it's really battery powered monolights are helping out when you're on location. But
Gus is asking if you're going to be doing any online workshops, and I'm also saying, or do you have a book planned, or is it all going into the website?
Yes. So the thing we are struggling with right now is that we cannot do our workshops, and we really love engaging with other photographers and sharing. So we're actually looking at a way to do we have this 2-day workshop. So we're looking at a way to figure out how can we do this in a way where it's not just 2 days of us talking, but there's an interaction and there's also some doing. So it will be a fairly small group of people, but and also you will be required to do some things on your own.
Yes, because we are always a lot of theory, a lot of practice, practice, because you need to get it in your hands to really. It's easy to understand, but the body needs to understand it as well.
The muscle memory.
Yes, exactly.
And so we are looking at a way to actually bring that to online, since we thought first that this COVID-19 is going to blow over and we're going to start traveling again. But now it looks like it's going to hang around for a while. So we need to start planning on how do we reach out to photographers around the world in a different way. It's a new normal, I guess.
Yeah, it's a new normal. And we want to do workshops. I mean, that's what we want to do. That's the most fun part.
So I think we were going to talk about some of the misconceptions in lighting. Do you have something in your presentation there?
Ooh, I'm thinking not so much maybe in the presentation, but we will talk about it. Here's just one more image. I need to show one more image. This is from a workshop in Mumbai, in India, and we had planned for a kind of a lifestyle shoot, put a nice, good-looking model on the table, rose petals, and take a lifestyle type of shot.
And actually, the theme was to use the available light and just enhance it. That was the main theme. But then, that guy that sits on the floor, one of the participants, said, "Why can't you do a night scene? That would be cool." And I was like, "Well, we haven't planned for a night scene." But his words was like, "Of course I can do a night scene. Let's skip everything we have planned. Let's do a night scene." So
yes, this is in the middle of the day, large windows everywhere. How do you make this to a night scene? So slightly shortly after this image was taken, David took this image, which is coming up now. I guess it's coming slowly.
Yep.
And so that's the same room, same time of the day, same amount of light. And this image is also built, it's 5 different layers that we are, I'm saying we, it's mainly him. But I'll take all the credit anyway.
When you say layers, do you mean lights or?
No, so like one layer is the very warm light in the background.
The furthest, it's all about how far it is from the camera. The furthest back, that is the first layer.
Yeah.
And all the different layers you need to light. And often it is one light per layer, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah. And then you're building it up from the back again. We want to have this warm meets cold light. The blue moonlight that comes in from the left is actually coming straight from behind the camera. So it's light coming from the from high up above from the camera, and then the little slanted shadow there is a flag, kind of create the illusion that the light is coming in from the side.
And there we have a typical example of what you said, John, about the environment, because that slanted shadow is actually 3 flags. There's one flag that creates the 45 angle degree shadow, and it's another flag above it to stop the light from hitting the roof.
Yeah.
And we have another flag below it, because I only want the light to hit that wall, the wooden panel wall, not anything else. So I separate every light to do one thing and nothing else, because then I have all the shadows, all the level of light in the shadows in control. Yes.
Nice. And it looked like you're using my favorite tripod too, the Manfrotto 058 with the button to go up and down.
Yeah, I think that was the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things going on in here, because we as part of the way we work with light is we found really easy, and we also worked out a couple of methods on how to work with these things. Like we mentioned, working with the layers, going from back of the image towards the camera, one layer at a time, one light at a time. But then also we have a set of creative tools that can be used in an image. For example, the chair that you can see on the left side of the image, way down below, it was just completely blue and very boring. So there we placed a gradient on that one to make it a little bit more interesting.
So
that's one tool.
Exactly. So that is one tool. If you have a boring surface, you can always put a gradient on it. It almost always works. So that is one thing. Another thing that is done, that is one of these creative tools, is that her arm on the left side of the image is sticking into the light. It's out in the dark and sticking into the light. And that sentence, stick into light, is another of those components we use. And I tell the students to create something that stick into light. That is a subject that they are supposed to work on and learn. So all these creative tools, as we call them,
Yeah.
they are super good for learning light.
And they're easy once you know it, and you can look for them because they exist naturally. And if they don't, then you can create them.
Yeah.
And it's like you mentioned when we were talking earlier, John, about darkness, how important the darkness is. And here again, you have shadows on her arm, and it's not all lit up, and that's what makes this image exciting.
Yeah.
Does your layer, I'm going to call it a theory, but does it work for tabletop still life also?
Actually,
Yeah, you mean like
we have an example of that here.
let's see, it's coming slowly like this.
So this image is natural light in the studio. Just I don't know what is.
I know this is just plain studio lights, the fluorescent lights. It's plain flat image, very nice Indian food, styled in a very nice way. And then once we turn off the lights and start lighting it, then the image transforms into hopefully something nicer.
Yes. So about layers, yes, of course. This is a very flat image, but I try to enhance the depth by thinking in layers. So I try to, if something is sticking up towards the camera, like the parsley, I think,
or the onion,
parsley, exactly, everything that sticks up towards the camera, if I can just place a light onto that to emphasize the three-dimensional reality, to extend the depth of the light of the image. So in that case, this is still layers. We have the bottom layer, the floor or the wooden panel, and everything that sticks up in towards the camera, I'm trying to put something on to emphasize it. So it's kind of layer thinking also there.
Yeah.
And then also starting with the background here, and the background is now the wooden table.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we had to make a decision. What do we want to happen on that? So we said, okay, let's create a blue shadow, the kind of north light type of shadows that you get
in Sweden.
In Sweden, at least. Well, I mean, we saw that in Alaska as well when we were there. So it does exist elsewhere.
Yeah, just stepping back a minute to the previous image, the gradients. What did you use to create the gradients?
The gradient is I used a 1x3 softbox, so it's just a feathered softbox upwards. So the gradient is created by actually I think that is created by how I am feathering the softbox. I know that there is an image of how the softbox is placed, and of course the main thing here is that I want a gradient. How can I create a gradient? If I couldn't create a gradient with a softbox, then I would create it with a flag or anything. It doesn't matter. Just I want to have a gradient on that surface.
And quite often you use a lot of flags, but with the softboxes, we always look for softboxes with a recessed front.
So a recessed front or a lip on it.
Yeah, exactly, because that lip would actually allow you to really control the light as you're moving.
That's interesting. Because I'm thinking back to a class I did with who is it over at Broncolor?
Carl Taylor or Urs?
Urs. I remember Urs did a class here in Seattle, and the softboxes they gave him all had lips, and he was so upset that because he wanted flat fronts on everything.
Oh wow! Because normally, I mean, Urs is a really, really skillful. He knows a lot about light. He is so normally, but I mean, depends on what image he was creating.
Yeah, it was portrait stuff. Yeah, I was just found it interesting because I'm like you. I like the control of that edge there.
Exactly. I mean, if you don't have the recessed front with the lip, the difference is that you have a wider edge to work with, and maybe he liked that in portrait situation.
You can use gaffer tape as the edge around the softbox that doesn't have the flap.
Yes, of course. You can use gaffer tape to everything.
Yeah, gaffer is.
Well, not everything.
Yeah, tried it on my eyebrows, didn't work. Yeah, so there's a lot of exciting things to be done, but I think we identified about 17-ish different creative tools that we bring out, and as we always, if you make a background interesting, you could put almost anything in front of it and the image will be good.
Mhm.
And so really focusing on the background,
Creating the background, because the background is always dictating light on your subject.
Yeah.
If you let that happen, you create the background to dictate the light on your subject, then it will feel natural. That is super important. And if you go to any theater and look at a movie, you will see that all the time, that the background dictates how and why they are lit.
Yeah, there's always one of those practical lamps. Could be like a light bulb in the background. Well, then you can put light on the same side as you have the
and
light.
as you see on this image, I mean, the light on her hair doesn't come from the light in the background, but it looks like it does. So it binds her to the background, which makes it look natural. Or
Sure.
yeah. So John, you asked about the misconceptions.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many. Where do we start? I mean, there's you had early in this conversation series, can't remember, probably one of the first 5 or 7 episodes, you had a long one separate talk about diffusion, and
Sure.
and that's very, very often commonly understood as if you have a diffusion, then you have a soft light. If diffused light is soft light, which is not.
Mhm.
And this is also something that we're talking a lot about and showing examples that you can have hard light with sharp shadow edges and a diffuse, like really low contrast or high contrast. You can have a very soft light with wide penumbras, wide shadow edges, and with dark shadows.
Dark
or
shadows, great.
light shadows.
Yeah. So these two things, I mean, the shadow edges, the softness of the shadows, and the contrast is two separate things. You can control them separately. It isn't they don't control each other. So you can control them separately, which creates a big possibility for you to be creative and really nail that feeling that you want.
Yeah, I
Another
know.
thing about-
I mean, for so long we knew what soft light was, soft edges from a big source. But now, in the past 10 years, it seems like so many photographers are defining whatever they want to do as soft light. They're just confusing. If it's low contrast, it's soft. If the light's far away and the exposure is low, it's soft. I mean, it's just gotten so crazy out there.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, there's some people saying that the sunlight travels so far, and the photons soften up, so the sunlight is soft, and that's like the hardest light you can have in the world.
Some people use soft light for just darker light,
Mhm.
like volume on music, like you soften the volume by making the music weaker.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the same with light. When you have a lower intensity of light, they call it softer. So the word soft is really going crazy right now. And I actually made a video somewhere where I bring this up, and I talk about that. I think that as a photographer, a professional photographer, you should actually say what is soft. Is it the shadow edges, or is it the contrast, or is it the level? If you now think that is something that can be soft, so to direct the word soft to what is soft.
Agreed. Agreed.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Other common misconceptions.
But, I mean, the diffusion thing that you talked about, I've seen so many people, they put diffusion on because they think they get a soft light. Oh, we want more soft light. Let's put another piece of diffusion, and they stack them up, and they think that the light, something happens with the light to make it more soft or something. I don't know, because they don't understand that what actually creates the softness is the width of the shadow edges. And if the size of the light source is the same, I mean, it will be the same if you just stack up diffusion onto
Exactly.
a light source. You will have the same.
You only lose power, and you
lose a lot
drain
of power. Exactly.
drain batteries, and you use up
I know.
your-
I keep seeing people post images and say, and I put 3 layers of diffusion over it. And I want to say, what are you getting out of that? Can I see the image with only 1 layer? Try it.
Doesn't it have to do with the roundness that the softbox creates? Because if you take a softbox and bring it back 11 feet, it's going to have a harsh shadow.
Right,
You
because it
bring
got
that
smaller.
softbox
the softbox gets
Yeah.
smaller when you back it up.
That's right. But the closer you bring it, a softbox, it's the roundness between the shadow and the highlight side that gives the illusion of it being soft. Correct? No?
Well,
No, not really. I mean, because as you're moving, I mean, if this is a light source and I move it closer, it will look a lot bigger. And that's what really creates the penumbra, makes the shadow edge wide. And that's why any light source closer will be softer.
but I think it's really important here to really address what is softer. Is it the shadow edges, as you speak about, or is it the intensity of the reflections and the skin tone? If they are going closer or further away, that can also create a feeling of softer. And I know, John, that you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is another thing. Is it that might be what you are experiencing, to feel the feeling of softness. So it's really important to see what is creating the feeling of soft. We have the shadow edges, we have the contrast, we have the ratio between the highlights and the skin tone. We have the
Temperature of light.
temperature. We have so many things that the word soft can contain. So
Yeah, I
it's
think
important.
another way of looking at it is when the light's in close, it doesn't wrap. I mean, we know light travels in straight lines, but if the softbox is in close, light comes from the edges too and fills in its own shadows, which makes that shadow gradient go wider.
Yes.
And that's also the interesting part. We're talking about gradients. I mean, any light source will have like create a stamp of light on what you're lighting on, if it's a wall or a subject. That stamp has a bright spot in the middle, and then it goes slowly into darkness. There's normally a gradient between light and dark. That gradient can be used to create the gradient on a chair, for example, or create a gradient over or from a body. If I want to have focus on my face,
Sure, that's feathering the light.
exactly. So that's the whole feathering thing, and that's what a lot of people are afraid of as well when they're using softboxes. They normally put the standard 45-degree angle when you're taking a portrait. Boom, that's all. That's the standard. But quite often you're trying to mimic something when you're lighting. If you're mimicking a window, there are windows that look like this, but most of the windows are straight. And then, I mean, if you start with that, you will have a light that mimics what the window light would do. And then again, then you start from there. That's a starting point. Then you start controlling and see, well, David is wearing really ugly shoes now. Luckily, you can't see them. So I feather it up a little bit. So I put his shoes into darkness, and so I can control that. And also one thing that happens when you have this is that the softbox up here is closer to his forehead, and the light here is further away to his chin. So this will be a lot brighter than this part, which would not happen in a window light. It's almost the same ratio. So then you actually can take the softbox and turn it like this, and control the ratio between forehead and chin, and even between the cheekbones, so that they are evenly lit by twisting it. So quite often when shooting with David, there's not a single softbox that points in the direction of what you're shooting. They're always pointing in some strange way, because you look a lot. You look what's happening with the light.
I always look at the subject, and I twist and turn my softbox to try to emphasize whatever I want to emphasize, or hide whatever I want to hide. So a softbox just like that means that there is no thought behind. There's no thinking behind the lighting.
And while we're talking about shadows, there's also, can you touch on the difference between a cast shadow and a self shadow?
Oh, yes, I can. Here we have a piece of paper, and we have some light up here. If I curl the paper like this, I suppose it will be darker here. This is a self shadow that is created by the surfaces angling away from the light source, and this surface itself creates the shadow. So this is a self shadow. But if I hold my paper like that and I have my hand here, the shadow now, that is a thrown shadow. Is that actually the correct word? Thrown shadow?
Thrown or cast?
Casted,
yeah.
yeah. In Sweden, we say thrown shadow. So this casted shadow, that is a thrown shadow. So that is the difference. And the thrown shadow, that is the one that you can control the shadow edges of. That is the one you can shape, you can do a lot of stuff. But the self shadow, like I have on my face here, is darker here and brighter there and darker here. This shadow I can't control because that is my face creating it. So I can control the contrast, but I cannot control the width of this terminator, as it's called, this shadow edge, so to speak, of the self shadow. That is more hard to control. I mean, if you bring in the light closer, so it will be bigger, this shadow edge will be pushed further away.
But it's the same width.
It will have the same width. But the problem is that when you go closer, the subsurface, the skin color will be brighter, which will make that gradient also go wider. So it's a lot of components there.
But as a simple rule, the self shadow that you have on the face, for example, very often if you have a light on this side, you get the shadow on this side of the face. That shadow edge can only be controlled by the surface. So if you have a rugged surface, really rugged, like a wall or something, or a moon.
Yes, but now you're speaking about the edge, right?
Yeah,
yes.
The edge. Then it becomes so that, or if you have then it becomes wider. But if you have a completely smooth surface, like a glass, then it becomes really, really thin.
So the surface, the structure of the surface also controls the width of the terminator.
Exactly.
The gradient.
Self shadow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another component.
So I think you can see why I enjoy talking to these guys.
Yeah, we get from zero to nerdy very, very fast.
Going back to zero,
Yeah.
if someone's just purchasing their first light set or lights and modifiers, what's a good starting point for them?
Well, I normally say the best lights are the ones that you will bring with you, that you will use. And I, even though we use a lot of Profotos, and the reason why we use Profotos is that we push these products a lot, and therefore we are dependent on them to fire every single time. Like we had this shoot with the movie poster. They were looking for a certain expression. They were trying to get these actors to get this certain expression and pose. And one said, "Yeah, there, that's the one." And if that's a black frame, then we're dead. But if I'm shooting just like as an advanced amateur, and I'm shooting a portrait of my daughter or a friend, it doesn't matter if I get a black frame. So you're not dependent on that. So it's a matter of what you're going to use them for.
Yeah, well, I'm not really talking brands here, but maybe.
Yeah, no, but even light-wise, because it does come at the end to a price question at one point of time. And I'm saying, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can light with anything. It's a matter of what are you going to use them for? Are you planning on being a photographer as a profession? Maybe you're going to use it a lot. Well, then you probably need to invest a little bit more. And if you're not, then you could use other brands as well. And I
would say that I get this question a lot, and I have three different answers for me. That this is for me. So the first thing is, okay, if I was sent away to an island that had some kind of business on it, so I was supposed to take portraits of them, but I can only bring as little equipment as possible and as cheap equipment as possible. What would you do to create as much money out of this situation? Then I would bring just normal reflectors, because I can do anything with just a reflector. I can bounce it, I can do a lot of stuff with it. But if you are starting out, then you have other things to take, take, how to say that, att räkna med.
To count with, or to depend on.
Yes. I think that if you have like one white umbrella, a medium-sized umbrella, you can have a lot of fun with that. You can learn a lot. I mean, that is also important. Something simple that you can bring, that you easily can put on, just to start to create, to start out and, you know,
Play with light.
play with it and get a feel for it. So that's the second answer. If I should select anything for a beginner to start with, just take a white umbrella, medium sized, perfect. And then we have, if I had, what do I bring? What's the key things for me when I have, if I had no stuff and very little money, what would I buy? I would buy one 2x3 softbox and one 1x3 softbox. With that, I can do my business portraits, and I can, you know, get my I can earn my living on that.
Interesting. Yeah, we didn't have any discussion about this beforehand, but my notes here, I say for me, it'd be a 2x3 softbox and a 1x3 strip, or a large diffused umbrella. For years, I used a 60-inch Phototech soft lighter to go 3/4 or groups. But then I like the rectangular box for catch lights. I like rectangular catch lights. I don't like round catch lights.
Yeah, and also with the 2x3, you can do so many things. I mean, if you twist it a little bit, then all of a sudden, I mean, the rectangular softbox, if I twist it, it looks like
It becomes a strip. Yep.
If I move it like this, I can make it look like a square. So you can really work and impact the shadow edges a lot with that.
Yeah, Cheryl's posted a question here. She uses the D1, D as in David. What pro photo modifier could be used to give an old Hollywood look?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, it's easy answer, but it's a answer you don't want to hear. It's the one thing that they used a lot in old Hollywood images is they used lights with Fresnel glass, yeah, and they had Profoto had this small Fresnel, which was really small, handy. You could put on any light, but unfortunately that's obsolete now. So it's going onto eBay and looking for Profoto small Fresnel. That's really the one, and it creates a fantastic old Hollywood look, the Fresnel lens.
Yes, it does. How about the?
You have the big one. There's the big,
yeah,
the Pro Fresnel, it's called, but that's a monster. It's massive. It's nothing you bring along. It's tough.
So if you think about why does the Fresnel creates that old Hollywood look?
There's a good answer. Yeah. Say bye to Gerardo. Gerardo's leaving. He's gonna go to work.
Okay. So the Fresnel lens, it makes the light rays, the cone of light be more parallel like that, which creates a longer depth of light. So the light will be more evenly bright over distance. That's what it does. So if you cannot get this Fresnel lens, because it's probably quite expensive, how can you create this longer depth of light? If you back up your D1 with nothing on it, you will have a longer depth of light, but you will also have this a lot of bigger light spread, which will light everything in the environment. So your contrasts will be way too low. The shadows will be very, very bright. So can you control the contrast? Yes, you can. If you put on a grid onto your D1,
yeah.
If you have a grid on the D1, as far away as you can come, you will have a long depth of light, and you will have darker shadows due to that the light doesn't hit the walls in your environment. That's the cheapest way, I would say, to come close. And then there is people who says that the Fresnel lens from Profoto has this tiny green tint that also creates something with the skin.
It takes away some of the magenta in the skin, so you get a more neutral skin tone. So if you have like I have on Friday or Saturday mornings, the red nose, or you might have rosy cheeks or something, then that it takes away a little bit of that magenta.
Yes.
Is it measurable, or is it just
well, actually,
it feels good at least?
Yeah, well, I actually did this experiment. I will post it someday on the site. I shot like 15 or 20 different light modifiers just to see how skin tones get affected by those small differences in
diffusion,
temperatures. Yeah, exactly. So I white balanced everything exactly the same. I have a face and I have a color chart, and it is quite a big difference, actually. So I think that would be measurable.
Yeah.
So the question was how to achieve the old Hollywood look. So I would say that the cheapest, simplest way would be to use a grid as far away as possible.
Yeah, move it way back.
Yeah. John, I'm sure you have some nice input to this too.
Well, there's ProPhoto. Another discontinued ProPhoto modifier was the mini spot, or I think
The spot
or
small.
the spot small that had a condenser in it, a
Yeah.
condenser lens, and that can help too. And there's some inexpensive versions of those now out.
Yeah, I mean, in general, looking for modifiers that has
Something that something that collimates the light and gets it narrows the beam.
And
gives
there are a
gives it
lot
depth.
of different modifiers like that out there.
Mm.
Alibaba and eBay, great
Mhm.
resource. Amazon as well. But search for Fresnel lenses, and then they need to fit whatever brand of flash that you have.
Yeah, most of them seem to come with an S mount, but you can change them.
Yeah, exactly.
What is quite important, I must say, that the Hollywood look, if you look at the shadows, they can't be split. You can't have double shadows. You can't have, the shadows must be, how to say it,
Really sharp.
really, really sharp. And that, and that comes from one single light source. So actually, if you use a snoot, I think you would get kind of good result as well.
Mm.
Because the snoot takes away all those reflections that come from a reflector. If you use a reflector, that can create separate shadow edges in one shadow. So a snoot is another,
Yeah,
simple
something with
way
a
to-
black interior.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank
Cool.
you.
So we're at an
Thank you.
hour
You're
here. Do
welcome.
people have other questions, or there's other things you want to bring up, David and Anders?
Well, we can talk for days.
Or
There's so many, yeah. I mean, there's so many things about talk about. Misconception of HS or HSS, depending on what brand you're using.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the high speeds, how it freezes motion. It does not, because it just make a longer flash duration. So avoid going above your sync time on your camera, because then you go into HSS and get really long flash duration.
Yes. Another very common misconception is actually the power of light. If you have a lot of power of your flashes, if you have the maximum power or the lowest power, how the light will be different or not.
Mhm.
That is quite important, because I think that in the beginning, when you start out with flash, you think that the more power you have, the more it will, a lot of stuff, bounce around, go through skin, go around corners and such. But it doesn't.
No, yeah. We even took an image of Ken, the head, and I used 2.4 watt seconds, 24 watt seconds, 240 and 2400 watt seconds, and they look exactly identical. All four images look exactly the same. So the stronger power you have doesn't change how light behaves. It behaves exactly the same if it's low or high.
Sure, you're
What
just controlling
changed?
exposure.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
So the camera, that is where it's.
Yeah, I mean, it has a limited dynamic range, so you move it up with the power, but the behavior of light is exactly. I think they might even have it here. Let's see.
What cameras are you using? 35,
Well,
2.25, 4x5s? What?
For me, I am using different cameras depending on what the client needs, but I have Canon cameras, 35s, but I have one Hasselblad, is it 4x5, I think. My short answer is normal 35 millimeter and 4x5. The problem is that with my Hasselblad, it broke recently, and the cost to repair it is almost half the price of a new one. So right now, that's a sad thought of mine.
And I'm also, we both tuning Canon as a kind of the mainstream, but I'm not the Hasselblad guy. I'm a Phase guy, so I'm using a Phase 1 XF with the IQ3 back 100 megapixel, but that stays a lot in the cupboard, and I bring it out for certain type of jobs where you know it's going to be blown up into really big, where you need the resolution.
Yeah, for
Have
people
there
who
been
don't,
have there been any issues with trigger circuit voltage?
Sorry, what was that?
trigger voltage on early Canons could only take a 6-volt trigger, but most of the time you're probably using wireless triggers now. You're not using a sync.
We're using all wireless now,
Okay.
and so it's all. I mean, my main guns are I shoot a lot with the 1DX Mark II and 3, and then we use the 5D Mark IV. We need a little bit more resolution. So those are the main
Mhm.
weapons that we use.
Yes.
Yeah, for those looking for high resolution, Canon just dropped the price on the 5DS to $1,200. $2,400 price drop yesterday.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That's crazy. Anyway, on the screen now is Ken.
Yeah, that's
Mentioned
Ken.
Ken before. For people who don't know you, they probably don't know Ken.
This is Mr. Ken. He is the best light model ever because he never blinks, and
He has glass eyes.
Yes, he has glass eyes, so
You
you can see the reflection in the catch light in the eyes.
That's right. Yeah.
And I promised Gus to fix one for him. So yes, okay. So here we see 4 images with the different power levels of the flash.
Yeah.
Up in the left corner, 2,400 watt seconds. Down in the right corner, 2.4 watt seconds. And as you can see, it looks exactly the same because the light behaves the same despite the power.
Yeah.
As long as you expose the camera, of course,
Mhm.
because the differences are in the camera, not in the light.
But it doesn't wrap around more. It doesn't go through matter, or and there's so many misconceptions around light behaves exactly the same. It's just that's just the way it is.
And of course, it might be differences in color rendering because if you have more, what's the word, capacitors,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and so you can change the color a bit, but that has nothing to do with how it behaves. So the light still behaves the same.
Great. Does anyone else in the audience have questions they want to bring up?
I must say, I'm just overwhelmed by that photograph that you shot in Tokyo. I think that's absolutely incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, I can't take much credit for that one. That was all David's, but I like that one a lot as well. So I used it a lot as an example, and especially because there's so many things happening in that image, and it's all flash or ugly flashlights. So you can do a lot of these fun things. You can't be lazy.
You cannot. It has to hurt.
Yeah, it has
I
to
remember
hurt.
we did this image once with a model standing, and I wanted to have a lot of sand coming through the window.
Oh my God! Yeah,
a lot of sand. And Anders was so, he doesn't like to when things are heavy and you have to work a lot. So we had a little bit of dispute there, but it all ended up beautifully. And
you know where it ended. We did bring in a lot of sand.
yes.
If you want, you can stop sharing the screen and that'll bring you up bigger. Or unless you have the photo of the sand.
Actually, let's bring it up if you have it somewhere.
I should.
Are you sharing your whole computer now with all the secrets?
I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I should. Well, I don't have much secrets.
Because the sand image is actually quite interesting too, if you find it, because it's also the same principle how it's lit. You will actually see a lot of similarities with the Tokyo image, even though it's totally different. There we go.
That's take that one away.
Oh God. Oh God.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Oh man.
Well, so the idea here, if I talk about it from my perspective, first we wanted to go, there's a place in Namibia called Kolmanskop. It's an old abandoned city where they harvested diamonds. And when the diamonds finished, everybody left. So it's all abandoned. Now the desert has taken over the city, and all these sand dunes are coming in through windows. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, the budget we had, I mean, it's like when you have a champagne taste, but you have a beer budget. That was the case here. So we had budget for light beer. And so we had to bring Kolmanskop into the studio. And that's what we did.
A lot
So
of
off you go.
sandbags. Yes, a lot of sandbags. So in this image, we actually see the same concept as we did in the Tokyo image. Starting with the back, that is where everything starts. That blue part, the blue sky, so to speak, that is actually a black foam board. And I light a white light on the bottom of the foam board. That is the brighter part. And then the blue stuff comes from a blue filter that is onto the window. And you can actually see that the filter is a bit wrinkled and dirty.
Yeah, up in the corner, up here.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that is why I wanted to put the filter onto the window, so it looks like it is the window that is dirty. So the gradient in the back from bright to dark blue, that is a black foam board where I place my light on the lower part, underneath, exactly, to create that gradient, another gradient like that.
1x3.
1x3, exactly. And then we have the light coming from the window into on the wall behind the guy. Now we have this thing. Oh, so that is a warm light. That is a CTO orange filter onto that light, and you can easily see how the size of that light source. It's a small sized light source that mimics the sun that hits the wall. The next light is the light onto the sand. That's the third layer, so to speak. The blue light on the sand is from above, and it's a big light source. I want it to look like it is the skylight, so all shadow edges need to be big. So it's a big diffusion panel,
Big screen.
big screen,
Yeah.
and we light it
Chimera.
from above with a blue filter and some green tint also to create a bit more cyan color actually. And then we have the guy itself. That is he's lit by a 2x3 softbox, quite low, way more low than you would do in a normal portrait session. It's like in height with his stomach, because I want a feeling from a door or from something that is lower, which also happens in nature. And it's also feathered upwards a lot, so his foot gets dark. So we have this gradient from the foot that is the feet are really dark, and it goes brighter and brighter up to his stomach, and then it goes into darkness again. So, and then we have the light on the floor in the left corner that finishes off this whole composition. That is another small light source with a orange filter on, a warm filter. And I think that's it.
Great.
Yeah, that's how easy it is.
Yeah.
And then someone had to take the wheelbarrow and take all the sand out again. It was not him. Gus asked about the hand. It's not from carrying the stuff, but actually it's from, for the website we've been creating we have recorded 14 hours of content already. There's already 5 published now, and there's tons of images. I've been sitting and editing, doing both post-production video and post-production on images. So I got this carpal tunnel syndrome or whatever they call it. So I had to rest my wrist a little
Yeah,
bit.
repetitive stress injuries.
Yeah, so it's been very intense since we launched this site now in the beginning of October. So we've been working like crazy on getting everything ready.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it will be good soon.
So if you like all this stuff you're seeing here, it's lightbybicho.com.
It's only $5 a month, and there's a lot of fun videos and educational. We do tend to put in a little bit of elements of fun in there, so it's kind of edutainment. I think it's easier to digest. Otherwise, it'd be too dry and boring. What to talk about.
Yes.
And there are different sections. We have one section where we call it Being Bicho, and where basically you walk through a shoot and you see everything through David's eyes, from as he's scouting, as he's posing and setting the lights. So you follow the whole shoot in those episodes. And then we have the Bicho's bunker, which is really where I locked David into a bunker that we have here in the studio, and then he can sit and rant about whatever he wants, and it
And
could
I
be.
do. And I do. I am totally
you.
unleashed. I can go how deep I
No.
want.
And we talk about reflections, superpositions, and but it's also still fun. But
I'm trying to take these really deep subjects and make some
sense out of them.
Yes,
Yeah.
and to make it fun, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to make a book too?
There is a book already, actually, but it's not published. We were looking for a publisher and trying to find a publisher that has a good deal. But the project name was the Book of Light.
Yes.
But then we'll see where it ends up. But
Nice.
there is a big book with all the content. But we're looking for a.
And I have read your book, John, and it's perfect. I mean,
Well, thank you.
it's exactly as it should be. So
A lot of truth.
Well,
two
thanks. I
thumbs up.
appreciate that.
Yeah. So in the meanwhile, until that book is available on publisher, go read John's book. It
It says it all.
It's very rare that when we look at things that there are always these faults from the physics point of view. But your book is really to the point. We try to find something.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
But
I mean, the best compliment I think I got was when I sent it to David and he read it and he said, "Did you take my class?"
Yeah, no, that's true.
There, Jim has a copy of it there.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really
Cool.
good read.
Yep.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to slow down, shut down here for today. I've got a client meeting coming up in a short while, so I want to get prepped for that.
Yeah.
But I, encourage everyone to visit your new site, join in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a forum in there, and we're very active in that forum. So if you have any questions that pop up now or later, just ask them there. It's actually us. We don't have any crew sitting there answering. It's us answering, and we really love engaging. And also, if you have images that you find tricky or something that you would like to create, but you don't figure out how to do it, ask us and we will help you. Because that's
John, will you put up their logo again?
Yeah, can you go start your share again?
Okay, let's see.
Now our IT department is working really hard here.
Let's see. So I need to go in here. Share screen. Yeah, the IT department should probably be fired. And let's see.
No. Is it shared now?
Yeah. So please do come join us. People have been asking us why we've set such a low price on this, because we do. I mean, the money goes into production of more content, but we want to keep it low and not go.
Yeah, make it accessible.
Yeah, make it accessible. I think it's a lot more fun because we can have more people. I mean, we're already now starting to have a lot of activity in the forums.
Yeah, it's really
a lot
fun.
of people answering and asking questions, and also, John, come join us.
I will. Yeah, I just haven't had a chance yet. I've been busy the past 2 weeks, but
Yeah, so
This really was excellent. I mean, I enjoyed that your process of layers. It's like Photoshop with layers, only with doing lighting with layers. I mean, it's really, it twisted my brains even more than they usually are. So
Well, actually, I used to think like this. What would I do in Photoshop? I think like that when I am lighting sometimes. It's like, okay, I find this part boring. I can feel a boring part in a corner or something. And then I think, if I were in Photoshop, what would I do? Maybe I would, put in a gradient or light up something, or, put some more emphasis on some detail. And then I do it for real. So
you guys aren't sponsored by ProPhoto.
no brands at all. Nobody.
And all of your equipment is ProPhoto.
We use some Kino flows for some video.
And you buy the equipment out of your own guilt, your own money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Are you
And-
at least are you at least getting it for dealer net?
No. No. No, unfortunately not.
How about not even landing costs?
Well, we probably need to bring up that, but we do get to borrow a lot of stuff as well. If there's something new that we don't have, we can talk to them, and then we can borrow it for a while and test it and do things with it.
Yeah,
but
so if you understand, Michael comes from a time when they were a lot freer with equipment. Michael was the founder of the Canon Explorers of Light,
okay. Yeah, no,
and he was a commercial photographer in New York for many years.
Okay. Yeah, and also one reason, I mean, we were pretty brutal with our equipment. So that's why we can't really shoot with the stuff that we borrow. We have to use our own because we bang it up a lot. And we just came this weekend, we were out on an island called Gotland, which is kind of medieval island in the middle of the Baltic Sea. And we had to carry the stuff. It felt like, I don't know how many miles, but.
And actually, I borrowed one of these
rocks.
B10s from Anders, brand new one.
Yeah, I just bought it.
Yeah, and I took it and I did my thing, and when I was ready, Anders was like, "What have you done?"
It's all scratched up, and I'm kind of careful with my equipment. He's not as careful as I am, but now it is all scraped up. So now it looks like a David's flash, but it's not yours. It's mine.
And one more question came in here. I don't know if it really has anything to do with lighting, but Seishu is asking about avoiding moire patterns on clothing.
Yeah. I mean, that would be more like a post-production question, I would say.
It could also depend on the camera you're using, whether it has
Yes.
what filter it has in front of the sensor.
Yeah, I mean, but it's trickier to change the camera
Afterwards,
afterwards, exactly. Well, I can chip in one thing that I haven't seen anyone give that tip, and that is, and I'm talking about post-production. In the Adobe RAW converter, you have this setting called, it's not the Moria thing, it's where you, let's see, where is it? I have to imagine the interface. This far down on the right. It is where you take away, it's just in my spine. Sorry.
Dehaze?
No, not dehaze. No. It's about sharpness. It's below the sharpness. You can say
detail, noise reduction, color smoothness.
The color noise reduction, exactly. The color noise reduction actually does a phenomenal job of removing moire. And I have never seen anyone talk about it, but try it because it works like magic sometimes.
Great. Well, thank you.
You didn't know that?
I did not know.
That's my go-to when I have moire. But otherwise, we have any comment on moire with cameras? I don't know because.
No, I mean 5DS is the go-to get camera if you have that type of issues. For me, at least. And now it's on sale.
Yeah, it's a big sale. I think it's been discontinued. Anyway, I want to thank both of you for joining us today. This has been really a lot of fun for me.
Yes,
I've been waiting to do this one.
So much. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's great to see you, Gus.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
See you, guys.
We've had so many back and forth, and it's always good to see all this and then engage with you guys. So
Yeah.
maybe now that you know us and we kind of got to do our spiel of who we are, maybe next time we just skip that part and just focus on questions. And
sure, we'd love to do this again.
Yeah.
So
Thanks,
say
John.
goodbye to the Facebook crew.
yeah. And,
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Again,
very much.
do reach out on social media or on the website. But we check our Instagrams, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, and everything. So if you have any questions, even if you're not a subscriber to the website, just ask us.
Yes,
we answer.
Great.
We love to answer.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.